Okay, what up ladies and gents, it's your favorite Asian robot right here, and this is the level 80 update for my Hammer Barbarian build, okay? So the last one was the late game video, which I showcased my Barbarian at around level 60. I've been playing this, obviously, live on stream, slowly advancing it until it hit 80, and people have been asking for an update. So here is the update. Now, if you haven't watched the late game video, okay, that is kind of required watching. I am going to link it in the description of this video. All right, pay no attention to me glitching in and out of reality, but anyway, link is in the description of the video. So is the link for the planner, which actually shows you where I've put all my Paragon points. Please refer to that, okay, because if you just follow along with the video, it might be a little tougher. This video is an update video to explain things, but you should use the planner and you know that link in the description of the video, because it'll be a lot easier for you to follow, okay? All right, first and foremost, let's update the skill build. Nothing much has changed for the skill tree. Obviously, past 50, we don't change a lot in the skill tree, okay? So I'm not going to remove my cam here, but I am going to talk you through it. Basically, this lunging strike is still the standard. Of course, we go for the combat lunging strike for Berserker. Hammer of the Ancients, nothing has changed here. Furious Hammer of the Ancients, you should have all this. But we have removed Endless Fury. Why? Because later in the game, once you get a glyph called Martial, okay, the Martial glyph is somewhere around here. I chucked it here. All right. It'll give you reduced cooldowns on your shouts. This, coupled with the awesome Bold Chieftain's aspect on your ring, is going to help you reduce your shout cooldown by a lot. So it is more efficient, rather than having this, which only increases your fury generation on basic skills. It is much more efficient to go for this one. While Berserking, fury generation is increased by 18%. You get 3% extra, you know, for the same number of skill points as Endless Fury, but the key to this is that it pairs well with other aspects, which we'll go through later. Basically, Berserk Fury gives me 6 Fury every second while Berserking, which also does technically get buffed by this. So, Fury generation being increased, and of course, factor in all the stuff like your Rallying Cry and things like that, and your Fury generation while Berserking is pretty good, okay? So that's why we've taken off Endless Fury, and we've gone with Prolific Fury. Okay? So here all you'll have is Hammer of the Ancients maxed out. Moving down to the first defensive skills, Rallying Cry and Challenging Shout are still your standard. Okay, again, this is covered in the late game build video. Now, you'll notice that I've taken off Imposing Presence. Obviously, no skill points for this left over. And a lot of people have asked me, why the frick do I have this? I still have Outburst and Tough as Nails. Why? Okay, so Outburst is literally irrelevant, but there's no choice because you need 1 rank here to unlock this. Tough as Nails is the key, not because of the damage. Okay, nobody cares about this minor thorns damage, but basically even when a distant enemy hits you with their attack, they will take thorns damage, right? This causes them to bleed, and when they bleed, you can then pair it with this defensive skill, which is Iron Blood Aspect, where every nearby enemy that's bleeding gives you damage reduction, okay? Now, this also helps with creatures in melee range, whatever. I just like the fact that I can make creatures bleed at a distance, so basically everything gets slowed down thanks to your hamstring, which means that I don't have to worry about directly hitting a target before the benefits of my other stuff like damage versus bleeding kicks in, all right? So that's why I swear by Outburst and Tough as Nails. I find that it helps me a lot, especially in swarm-based situations where everything is whacking me. I may not be ready to hammer down and deal the AoE damage, but they will all give me damage reduction basically. All right, up to 18%. Well, of course the max is 20, but mine only rolled with 18%, but still very useful. Okay, so this is why I swear by Outburst and Tough as Nails. Okay, if you find that it's not useful, take it off and put on something else. I guess you could get additional damage reduction from aggressive resistance, but I found that this works really well with that particular aspect, so I still have this in my build. Now, we have changed a couple of other things, all right? For the brawling skills, we still have Warcry, but now we have extra points in aggressive resistance, giving you damage reduction while berserking. My 2 skill points that went in here, I would love to have put in 3, but obviously because I had to contribute 2 skill points up here, I didn't put a full 3 ranks into this. Instead, of course, generating fury is more important. And last but not least, I have now added Guttural Yell into the mix. Why? Previously, without Bold Chieftain's aspect and the Martial Glyph, I wasn't really able to get a lot of value out of Guttural Yell. But now, my shout skills will also cause enemies to deal 12% less damage for 5 seconds. So this is extremely helpful, especially in the later stages in World Tier 4 when you're doing your best to survive. This gives you a lot of additional damage reduction, which is what helps you survive some of the very, very tough situations. All right, so I've included that in, and that's what I've got. All right, coming down to the next tree, okay, here, you'll notice I've taken off the previous thick skin passive because now that we have, again, all the shouts running up almost constantly, we have more uptime for the war cry, all right? And we can use it more often, allowing for faster fortifications here. If I recall, there are no other ways of fortifying. Yeah, none of these fortify you. So it's mostly just your war cry as well as your Paragon Path. The Paragon Path's Warbringer. The Warbringer legendary node is what will contribute the rest of your fortifications. So although this was useful previously, when I would fortify every time I took damage, the other problem is that in World Tier 4, things hit you so hard that you don't want to take damage at all. So in order to avoid taking damage, I've taken off thick skin, and I've also lost the additional damage while fortified from counteroffensive, but this can be compensated in a variety of ways. So I found that this was useless, took it all off, chucked it in all this other stuff that I didn't have before, because basically I needed more survival and this was not providing it. So this was removed. This area is pretty much the same. 3 points in heavy-handed, wallop, and concussion. Wrath of the Berserker all the way. Tempered Fury, now this one I've been kind of half and half on, but I found that just having at least 2 points in Invigorating Fury was more useful than just relying on Raid Leader for my shouts. You should not actually theoretically be relying on any of this for healing, but it's a nice top-up mid-combat, and it can sometimes save you from, like, it's sometimes the difference between being absolutely shattered and surviving, all right? So that's part of the key. And Unbridled Rage is still the same. So that's it for the skill tree, okay? Again, nothing much has changed, just that we got some additional defensive skills and we dumped some of the stuff that was slightly less efficient, okay? But once again, I still swear by Outburst and Toughest Nails. If nothing else, it helps my Iron Blood aspect work well. All right, so I'm still using it. Again, if you don't like to use it, do whatever you want with that. Okay, I'm not going to stop you. Now, expertise, still the same. Okay, two-handed sword expertise, two-handed mace expertise. Y'all should know this by now. Okay, if you don't, late game video covers it. Now, Paragon Path. Okay, let's have a look-see. Now, the Barbarian is a bit complex, so this is where I'm going to remove my cam and talk about this, okay? The Barbarian relies on Glyphs to do the most of their damage. Why? Because a vast majority of these nodes are not useful. Nobody cares about fire resistance, okay? Nobody cares about, well, max life is good, and so is armor, but we don't have enough points for this. Nobody really cares about random stuff like, where is it? This one. Critical strike damage with one-handed weapons. You don't use specific weapons, so you look for generalist nodes, and unfortunately, not many of them exist on the boards. Okay, so Havoc deals critical strike damage in general, but this one, Heavy Blows, requires one-handed weapons. Similarly, if you were to go up to, like, say, a Decimator board, two-handed slashing weapons, which we don't use. We use some very specific things to max out our character. So there are a lot of nodes that are just not useful at all. And for that reason, we structure things a bit weirdly. Like the Warbringer board is probably the most useful board out of all of them. Even then, it comes with stuff like resistance to elements, which we all know is useless compared to armor. Hell, if I had extra points, this is what I want to get because armor is hella useful. All right, if I ever get extra points, I'm coming down here for the armor. Armor is your lifesaver. Don't sleep on it. You need it. Okay? I am always desperate for more armor. But all things considered, okay, there are not very many points that you have, so you need to be very careful about where you spend them, because if glyphs, if nodes are not the thing for the barbarians, what do? They function off glyphs. Glyphs like Crusher helps you deal massive damage. Glyphs like Exploit are crucial to your build. Glyphs like territorial for damage reduction, because you're always going to be close to enemies usually. Martial for your shouts. I am planning on ire as well for damage reduction while berserking against elites only, but still elites are some of your biggest threats. More damage while berserking is necessary, and I'm gonna go try for, now there's a couple of others, but they're not very useful. Like this one, Blood Feeder, I leveled up a bit, but then I realized that the increased critical strike chance is really not gonna help me compared to damage reductions, and I tried to find all the possible damage reductions, but this one, for example, Cleaver only applies to Axe. Brawl, not exactly helpful here. Disembowel, not exactly helpful here. I mean, increased bleeding damage, nice, but our vast majority of our damage is not from the bleeds. Okay, you've got Executioner, pole arm based, no thank you. Dominate for overpower, which we don't use. Might is great when wielding two-handed weapons, but the base bonus is just bonus to magic nodes. And unfortunately, not a lot of the magic nodes surrounding the glyphs are useful sometimes. Like this one might be cool, but I wasn't going to sacrifice exploit for, you know, might. So that didn't happen. Mortal Draw is when you swap weapons, which you don't do in this build. Revenge is mostly about thorns damage, and also bonuses to rare nodes, which again, there are not that many that are useful. And Seething is when you're wielding a sword, which you are not in this case, you're using a two-handed bludgeoning weapon. Undaunted is quite useful. It was actually a toss-up for me between Undaunted, all right, and Ire. I actually considered both for this particular glyph node. The core difference was that Undaunted requires willpower, okay, but Ire requires strength. So if you'll notice that this glyph node is literally surrounded by strength nodes, so Ire will actually give you more value. So it was actually a toss-up for me between the two, because the additional damage reduction when the more fortify you have is actually much more useful than the damage reduction versus elites. But I realized that it was probably more crucial for me to have a balanced out damage as well, because you can't just go for reductions. If you do, you're not going to have a great time, because you need to balance your kill time as well as your survivability. So that's why Undaunted wasn't used. Weapon Master wasn't used either, and Wrath I liked, but I'm thinking about if I don't know if I'll have enough points, because I do want to capture like several of these other nodes, but if I do get enough points, I might go for Wrath as well, because core skills deal increased critical strike damage, which is really good, but it will be like literally the last glyph that I work on if I choose to work on that. So that is a thought of mine. I don't know if I will, but I'll see how it goes, because the problem that I now have is that I've expanded my board in all sorts of different ways, right? But I don't have an easy way of capturing another board. I'll have to manually calculate, like, how can I get to the next board as cheaply as possible, because I don't want to spend, like, the more Paragon points you spend to get to the next board, the less you're actually, like, there's also this board here, which gives increased physical damage, which is really, really good, and max life. You know, I would really want to capture this because it's an extra 20%. So it might be worth it for me just to go down here and not go for another glyph. But then again, glyphs contribute a lot. Don't underestimate them. So Wrath, if I do get one, this would be really excellent, because the additional bonus is really nice. The one that where skills generate an additional 3 fury. Like, that means that every time I critically strike with my skills, I can generate even more fury to bring out, you know, another hammer faster, which would be super useful, especially if I was berserking and I gained the bonus off that. So this is my plan, but I don't know if Wrath will come out, because I'm going to have to test it as I go along. All I know is that Ire is the next choice. That's going in here. I'll have to capture this, and I'll try and capture as many strength nodes as I can, and I'll see whether or not it's possible for me to at least grab, you know, damage to bleeding enemies. And this board gate up here, like, there's a lot of ways that I would, you know, can try this, but I don't know how, like, I don't know whether it'll go well or badly, so I will try. That's all I can promise you. I can try, but yeah. I still need some time. Also, I considered getting this legendary node, but bleeding enemies having a 10% chance to grant berserking is only if you kill them, not as useful against bosses and elites, so that's why I didn't go for that. Alright, so now that you understand why glyphs are so important compared to nodes, the overall for my Paragon, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what I did here. Alright, So for those of you who've already seen the late game video, you should know all this. I'm just like, it's just going to be a quick rundown. Okay, right side to Brawn, Glyph socket, Iron Strength, Raw Power. I captured both of these. And again, all this is in the planner. You can refer to it to see exactly what I've done, and you can copy this if you want. Okay, you don't have to like screenshot or anything. I went up here and I got this Glyph socket for Exploit straight away because Exploit is crucial to your build. This has to be worked on first. Make sure you get Exploit activated as soon as possible, which is fairly easy. Then once you've got all this vulnerable damage bonus, you are happy dappy appy. Okay, so then you move on. You move on here where you will go and grab like this, like you will grab this and then the legendary note and then this damage while fortified. I stopped here and then I went on to another board. I went on to this board for this critical strike damage, physical damage. This is the flawless technique board, which is actually for one-handed, but the glyph socket here is fairly useful for territorial. Territorial is not taken for damage, okay, because there are very few dexterity nodes. Okay, territorial functions on the basis of dexterity. I considered putting in Undaunted here. This one for the fortify instead of territorial, but close enemies in general functioned a bit better than this one, damage while fortified, because it does take me some time to fortify. So I figured on the basis of what gives me the highest burst damage, I went with territorial, even though there aren't that many dexterity glyphs around here. So I chose that, and then I just moved on forward. And it has worked fairly well. Now, actually, why is there this extra? Sorry, that should not be there. I don't know why I have that. But that extra means that now I can now chuck that point elsewhere. Woo! Woo! One step closer to my hieroglyph. Okay, yeah, sorry. For efficiency's sake, I don't know why. I think I thought that this dexterity node would come into play, but it didn't. This is obviously already like maxed radius. So yeah, I grabbed whatever I could and then got it activated, and then I moved on. After that, I moved up here, and it was crucial for me to get Martial. Okay, why Martial? Because Martial is exceptionally good. You need to get it as soon as possible, but it depends on what you want. Like, you could grab this here and then grab the strength nodes first so you can have Martial earlier until you unlock your fourth board. That's also a perfectly viable way to do things, but it will cost you respec. Okay, so you can do it that way as well. I did do it kind of like that so that I could have Martial a bit earlier, but ultimately you're going to want to move it up here. Why? Because this one has plenty of strength nodes that are easily accessible. Okay, so by putting Martial here, you can activate it by costing yourself the minimum amount of strength nodes, because all you really want is the additional ability of Martial. Like, the more strength nodes you capture does not increase the effect of this. It only buffs magic nodes. But the magic nodes here are also very useful, because on the decimated board, guess what? Next to the glyph, you have vulnerable damage, vulnerable damage, vulnerable damage, vulnerable damage. You can even get extra dexterity if you need it. All right, but you don't really need it unless, like I said, if I'm gonna get to a next board, I might go up here just to grab this. All right, so there's some potential there as well. Like I said, I haven't decided if I want to go this way up to this and then grab this board, or if I want to go this way here and grab this, because maximum life is very, very attractive. And 20% extra physical damage, which I am almost guaranteed to have, is also very much more attractive than craving. Okay, because damage to bleeding enemies, I also get 20%, but this is just overall baseline. So it's equal, but this has max life. Max life is very attractive, like I said. So I haven't decided where I'm going to go with that one, but I guess we can see which one gives me the best points after I'm finished with Ire. Like I said, that's going to be my main focus, and then we'll see how that goes. Because I'll capture as many strength nodes as I can, but I may not go for like the furthest ones. Because although this would be in range, probably not the wisest idea. Like I said, I will see how it goes, and I'll determine which way is the best to spend points so that I can access. Like I said, if I can, I want Wrath. All right, so Martial, I went up here to grab Arrogance and Demolish so that I could trigger the Martial Glyph. And then basically, if I need to, right, the Martial Glyph buffs even the damage reduction, so I can grab an extra 4% damage reduction versus vulnerable enemies, which can be crucial for pushing the highest nightmare dungeons with your team. All right, so this is another potential that you can have if you want. All right. Like I said, decide for yourself based on your stat allocations, stuff like that. Do you have enough points to trigger the additional effects for most of your things? If you do, then you're fine. If you don't, then you can look at all that kind of stuff. Like, I do want additional dexterity, which is sort of fueling my desire to go down this path, because I know that then I can trigger this and get even more vulnerable damage, which I kind of really want. So yeah, all of this are part of my considerations for how I structure my movements. And that is basically where I'm at. All right. After I finished this board, I went down here because I'd already gotten up to here. Then I just went another 5 points, and it was a really cheap way to buy the next board, which is Blood Rage. Again, Blood Rage, you want it because there are so many strength nodes that you can plug in, along with the rare nodes that give strength, and you can plunk ire right in there, and it is good to go. So this is a very good decision for this particular board. Okay, so yeah, that is basically what I've done with the Paragon Path. Again, you can check this out in the planner. Okay, Barbarian Paragon for the end and late game is mostly focused around capturing the glyphs. Once you can capture the glyphs, you are good to go. If you cannot capture the glyphs, you're going to have problems. Okay? Plain and simple. Now that we've dealt with Paragon and the skill allocations, I've given you my explanations for all that kind of stuff. Okay? Let's talk about gear, aspects, everything. This is actually going to be much quicker to go through because you would have remembered a lot of this from the previous video. Once again, take a look at that if you haven't already. All right. Talking about the aspects that I'm using. Okay, I'm going to go through jewelry first. We've got the Ancestral Force still on the amulet because I find it most useful there. Bold Chieftain and Berserk Fury. Bold Chieftain reduces the cooldown of your shouts up to 6 seconds. Crucial for all the fights that you're going to go through. Next, Berserk Fury generates fury every second while berserking, and you are always berserking. Literally thanks to Warcry. Because this gives you berserking for 4 seconds. You can berserk due to lunging strike, and you berserk while Wrath of the Berserker is on. Basically, you are always berserking, so having this is a major help. There is an alternative one that gives you fury whenever your shouts are active. That's also really good, but I haven't been able to drop it at all. All right, and that is with no matter how many aspects I farm, I never find it. So I use Berserk Fury because this one rolled really well. Okay, for my weapons, I'm using the Limitless Rage aspect on the hammer. Why? Because it can buff up to 60% increased damage. So every point of fury you generate while at max can buff up your damage up to 60%. And this is really, really easy to do. Okay. For my dual wielding weapons, I'm using basic attack speed increase so that I can build up fury faster. And the other one is, so this is rapid aspect, expectant aspect. Because this one, whenever you attack enemies with a basic skill, increases the next cast of your core damage skill. I've tried to get this to max, but I haven't found one that dropped at 10%. Otherwise, ideally, that would be the case. So usually 3 basic attacks, then you want to hammer down for max effect. Okay, Edge Master's Crystal Greatsword. This two-handed slashing weapon, I have imprinted the Edge Masters on it. Ideally, you want to get a full Edge Masters, meaning the 20%, so that when you put it on this two-handed, it goes up to 40% increased damage based on primary resource whenever you cast, all right? But I still haven't rolled a perfect one yet, so this is why this one is stuck at 38%. Okay, for my armor's aspects, I've got Iron Blood aspect on the helmet, damage reduction against bleeding enemies. I've got Disobedience on the chest, maxed out, up to 50% extra armor. On my gloves, I have the Retribution aspect, which helps me deal increased damage versus stunned enemies. I found it to be just a nice little additional thing to have. Sovereignty, also the 8% chance to stun enemies is quite useful because sometimes when enemies are ranging you, they get stunned for a little bit. It can really help you out if you're struggling with that. All right, don't knock on the 8% chance. But of course, what you mostly want is the increased damage to stunned enemies. Then you've got the pants. On my pants, I've got damage reduction via Aspect of Might. And on my legs, this was the only Exploiter's aspect I managed to find. So it's only 26%, but it can go up to 50%. And if enemies are unstoppable, you deal increased damage to them. Great in PvP, but also great against bosses. So this is what I've enjoyed a lot. And of course, the 20% increased crowd control duration is very helpful for your slows, bleeds, whatever. Sorry, for your slows, your stuns, everything. 20% increased duration is quite helpful. All right. Basically, a 2-second stun becomes 2.4 seconds. So think about that. Very useful. Getting an extra half second. All right, so that's it for the aspects. Now let's go through the gear stats. Gear stats for your jewelry, of course, your amulet. You see cooldown reduction, fury cost reduction, any kind of damage reduction if you can. This is what I found most useful. For my rings, critical strike chance, damage, critical strike chance. If you can, vulnerable damage as well. But other than that, choose a damage modifier, and if you feel the need to, you can get maximum life, which can be very useful, or max fury. Either one works, but for really pushing the ultimate nightmare dungeons, I do recommend max life. But that's a perfect roll. It's very difficult to get. Crit damage, vol damage, max life. All three of these quite difficult to get. So take what you can get, but ideally you must have crit chance if you can maxed, because that is the most crucial thing that you need to roll. Okay, the rest is just extras if you can, but try to get as many extras as you can, obviously. For your weapons, same thing, crit strike damage, vulnerable damage. Then I'll take 2 raw damage modifiers. So in this case, stunned enemies, core skill damage, both were great, and they both rolled very high. For your mace, because you're using a two-handed bludgeoning weapon as your main weapon, you need damage per second to be as high as possible. Okay, for your swords, for your one-handed weapons, please use swords, because swords come baseline with critical strike damage, which is already a great modifier. You add critical strike damage, vulnerable damage into that, close damage, and bleeding enemies, and you've got a perfect roll. Now, my bleeding enemies is really a low roll, but if I ever get to re-roll this, I will hope for a higher roll on that. So yeah, you don't need to worry about DPS per second. So that's it for your one-handed weapons. For your two-handed weapon, slashing, you want a sword as well. Why? Baseline critical strike damage. I've got vulnerable damage, critical strike damage on this for huge damage modifiers. Close enemies, which is perfect. That one got a god roll on that. And then bleeding enemies was really high as well. So this sword is probably never getting replaced. You don't have to worry about DPS per second, because again, that only matters here on your bludgeoning. Okay. For your helmet, all right, you will want to have cooldown reduction. Basic attack speed can be very helpful if you get it, but other than that, you can roll whatever you want. Cooldown reduction is your most important. For your chest piece, try to get damage reduction distant and close, then armor, and then life. You don't need to worry about damage, but try and take what you can get. Ideally, as much reduction as possible, and then armor. So in this one, I happen to only roll total armor as well as damage reduction distant, but the damage reduction distant was so high that I had to use it. For your gloves, critical strike chance, attack speed, standard, and then ranks in your core skill. Okay, so this one has 3 good rolls. I'm probably never replacing this unless I roll something with a perfect critical strike chance. For my legs, I went with damage reduction close, distant. These 2 are standard, but I happen to roll really well on bleeding as well. So this and this together worked out nicely, and then I get additional damage reduction for bleeding enemies. I get dodge chance against close enemies, and I got total armor on it with a perfect roll. So overall, this was helpful to me, and I said, okay, good enough, until I get literally perfect rolls. For boots, you want to have maximum evade charges on the innate modifier, which is the thing under armor, because there's a variety of different ones for boots. Not only that, you need to get movement speed and fury cost reduction. So again, these boots are probably never getting replaced. All right, unless I roll something drastically better. But yeah, max evade charges are crucial, as well as movement speed, and if you can, fury cost reduction. I just happen to roll nearly perfect on movement speed and fury cost reduction. Plus max evade charges, these boots are the best. That's why I got these at level 61 and literally never changed them. So yeah, that's why this is still sacred, because there's been nothing better that I've encountered. Okay, so that is about it for gear. In terms of your gems, okay, last section, gems. Skulls in your jewelry, please dear God, skulls in your jewelry. Okay, for your weapons, I went half and half on the sapphires and the emeralds. Why? Because my vulnerability only lasts 3 seconds. So it's great burst damage to have this, but crowd, which applies like the emerald's bonus, all right, the critical strike damage versus vulnerable enemies applies to bosses really well. So if you get a lucky hit on your first big hammer down on them, you can one-shot a boss. But the sapphires apply in general to everything except for bosses. All right, critical strike damage to crowd-controlled enemies. So sometimes, even if my vulnerability fades and the enemy is still alive, I can still dish out a massive critical. So I chose to go half and half on this. You can choose to specialize fully, excuse me, fully in emeralds or fully in sapphires. It's up to you. I leave the choice to you based on what you want to do. I went half and half. For my armor, okay, I went with purely rubies for additional max life so I can survive, but there is an alternative. You can also use sapphires. The reason why you can use sapphires is because sapphires, let me just quickly show you, give you damage reduction when you are fortified, and you fortify fairly quickly with this build, and you stay fortified. So having additional damage reduction while fortified can be really good. So if you don't feel that you're getting enough life, or you just don't need the extra life that this is giving you, maybe because you've rolled a lot of life modifiers on other stuff, right? You can literally ditch the rubies for sapphires instead, which will give you even more damage reduction to survive. So that is something else that you can consider. All right, but you know, that's up to you. Okay, so those are the options that I have, and that brings us to the end of this update. Okay, thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you guys. Thank you very much, as always, for paying attention to those that did. All right, and now, I'm going to go through the channel members who keep our stuff running, but also big thank you to our top tippers, super chatters, all of you lovely people that ensure that we stay in business and that we can do what we do every single day. You know, I used to be afraid of how long I was making these videos, but then I realized that it's better to go in detail so that I can explain everything to people and explain like why certain things work, why certain things don't work. So thank you very much for supporting that. All right, and thank you to these lovely channel members. Starting right at the top, Death Dawning 982 at Plus Ultra. We've got OG, Jerry Fast, Rogue Assassin, Zach NFG as Prestige. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to all of our honored robots as well. Kaishiwa, Bob John, Maxim Lots, Corey Ryu, Devin Lashin. I always call him David. I don't know why. So sorry. Devin Lashin, Mookie Mocha, Rena, Chase Taylor, Scuddy, Nathan Strong, Sabingu, AKJ, Lady Neo, Joey Danze, A Ripley, Daraverse, Che D12, I'm Peeps, Syed Assad, Coda CMF, Kami SMH, Conrad C, Nate the Great, Benjamin Savage. Thank you to all of our cool and weird bots as well. And don't worry, here's the combat demonstration, guys. Enjoy. All right, here we go. Okay, what up, guys? We are in a tier 45 nightmare dungeon, nice and easy. Okay, this is not a difficult dungeon to do. Considering that I'm level 83, a tier 45 is not really very anything special. So we're just gonna wander around here just to show off the build. Enemies are level 99, but again, for a barbarian like you, that is no threat. I didn't even get to hammer down that elite, and it died anyway. So yeah, you will not encounter too many problems around here. Your shouts are your lifeblood though, so the playstyle for this, especially when you're fighting way above your level, would actually be to use your shouts whenever you're in conflict. Okay, so don't wait as long as I did to pull them off. I just wanted to take it slow and explain to you. As you can see, even if you wait just a short duration of time, you will get killed. Alright, so we're gonna wait till the shouts cool down, then we're gonna engage properly. Basically, every single time I engage in combat, I start with my challenging shout. I pop all the other shouts, because again, with the martial glyph, you're fine, right? And then that's one encounter finished. You want to move around a little bit, get prepared. Okay, once your shouts are ready, dive in again. Okay, you trigger all your shouts, and then you go ham. If you find that there are more than one elite, like in the same location, also avoid the explosions and stuff like that, because you will die. I pop Wrath of the Berserker, assuming that there are 2 or more elites in the same location. Okay, otherwise just your shouts are enough, and you should be able to just crush them like so. Alright, granted these enemies are about 16 levels higher, but again, this is for demonstrative purposes. For ideal leveling, you only need to go about 10 levels higher to get ideal XP versus kill time. It will feel like a walk in the park. Okay, this, as you can see, me fighting 16 levels above is a bit of a challenge, and also just to show you that the build functions really well. So once again, same principle. See, dive into combat, you smash, and you're good to go. This is what we do every single time, and we try to avoid blowing ourselves up. Okay, just be careful with all that, and you'll be fine. Alright? Barbarian is literally not complex. Go in, use all your shouts, okay? Then you can basically ignore most things that the enemy's gonna throw at you, and you're good to go. You're literally good to go. Alright, wait for the shouts to cool down, dive into the next set, and you carry on. You can even be a little bit less cautious with the dives, okay, when you're only fighting about 10 levels above you, because it is so easy. When they're only 10 levels above you, it's literally a cakewalk, which you will actually probably see on stream as well. Alright? But I try only to engage when my shouts are up, especially with elites, because you can die. You're not invincible. Okay, you can withstand a lot of punishment, but you're not invincible. You're nowhere near invincible. Alright? take a look. I'm still taking plenty of damage. All right. It's just that I'm fortified, so there's an additional bit of reduction there. Okay. But if I do see more than 2 elites in the same location, like I just showed you, all right, I go ham with Wrath of the Berserker and I start blasting straight away. No waiting, none of that. I go in, I start hammering. Okay. So that is basically how you would play this style of Barbarian. In about 3 minutes, we've cleared most of the core bits of this. All right. I can't remember if there is a boss here, but if there is one, I will show it to you. But I hope this gives you a good grasp of basically how I play this build and how it is structured and designed so that you guys can get the best value out of it. Like I said, even 16 levels above you, it's not going to be much of a threat as long as you stay calm and you know what you're doing and you don't panic. You're not panic pressing, you know, all that kind of stuff. As you can see, utterly calm right now. I'm only taking damage from the explosions of the arachnids, and even then I'm healing up. So this is without any shouts trigger. All right. So you do, assuming you've built correctly, you should have plenty of damage reduction to the point that most things are not going to be a threat to you, but you can still lose your life if you stand inside pools of fire like that. Stuff like that. You don't want to do that. I've done that many times on streams and died unceremoniously in front of you guys. Okay. But obviously for this, I'm, you know, going to pay attention and give you a full showcase of what I do. Playing properly means not rushing. When you rush, sometimes you're going to end up doing a lot worse than if you don't rush. Okay, I rush on stream all the time and it goes very badly for me. So take that as a lesson and don't do that, okay? Do as I say, not as I do. Because if you do as I do, you'll have a rough time, okay? All right, if there is a boss, I'll take you through that momentarily. If not, thank you very much for watching the combat showcase. I hope this helps. Enjoy the Barbarian. Okay, as it turns out, there is a boss for the tier 25, so, sorry, for the tier 45, 25, lol. Alright, here we go. So, as soon as the boss starts, I usually go in with all my shouts, then I use Wrath of Berserker, and I just start beating on him. You will want to manage your hit points quite well if you can. Alright, try to stay away from his lightning and whatnot. But basically, any boss is not going to be a threat to you. You'll usually blow through them in seconds. So yeah, that's about it. Okay? Enjoy. Thank you very much. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you on the next video. Bye.